Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're breaking down a really fundamental question for pretty much everyone.
Mm-hmm.
How do you invest effectively?
Right, because it changes depending on where you are in life.
Exactly. We've got several sources here, all giving advice on personal finance, specifically investing, tailored for different life stages,
Yeah.
from your 20s right through to retirement.
Yeah, and our mission for this deep dive is really to pull out the actionable stuff from these. We want to give you, our listener, a kind of roadmap for building an investment strategy that fits your life stage right now.
Without getting totally lost in the weeds, hopefully.
Key takeaways you can actually use.
Okay, so the big idea here is that your investment strategy shouldn't just be static. It needs to evolve. Seems straightforward, but why? What drives that change?
Well, think about it. As you go through life, a few key things are always changing. Your time horizon, how many years until you plan to retire, that obviously shrinks. Your income usually changes, hopefully goes up. Your responsibilities shift, maybe student loans early on, then perhaps a family, a mortgage.
All those life things.
Exactly. And importantly, how comfortable you feel taking risks with your money can change too. So all these moving parts mean your investment approach needs to adapt.
And that brings us to asset allocation, yeah. Sounds a bit jargony.
It does, but it's actually a core concept. It's just about deciding how to divide your investment money among different types of assets.
Okay.
The main ones are usually stocks owning pieces of companies, more growth potential, but also more ups and downs.
Volatility.
Right. Then bonds, which are basically loans, generally more stable.
Yeah.
Then cash, or things very close to cash, easy to access, and sometimes real estate.
So the goal is finding the right mix,
Mm.
balancing growth potential with not losing sleep at night.
Precisely. Finding that balance that fits your specific point in life and your comfort level.
I like the analogies in the sources. One compared your portfolio to a garden.
Yeah, that was Investopedia. It's a nice image. Stocks are like your growth plants. They can shoot up, but might need more tending, more sensitive to, say, bad weather in the market.
Okay.
Bonds are maybe the more steady parts, the shrubs or structures providing stability. And like any gardener knows, you need diversity, different types of plants, different types of investments within each category. It protects the whole garden.
And then there was the financial triathlon one from Waller SC. That sounded energetic.
Yeah. In that analogy, cash is like the swim. You absolutely need it to start the race, but swimming alone won't win it for you.
Makes sense.
Stocks are the bike ride. That's where you cover the most distance. Potential for big gains, but you might hit some potholes or hills volatility again.
Gotcha.
And bonds are the run. Steady pace, reliable, helps you finish strong without burning out too early. Both analogies really drive home that you need a balanced approach, and that balance shifts depending on where you are in the race or the season.
Good point. Now, something else mentioned was that age isn't the only factor dictating retirement.
Super important point. Just because you're a certain age doesn't mean you have to retire then. If you're aiming to retire early, say, you'll probably need to save more and maybe invest more aggressively than someone with a longer timeline. Your personal goals are key.
Right. Okay, let's dive into the specifics then, starting with the 20s. What's the big advantage for folks in this decade?
Oh, it's undeniable time. Just sheer length of time. They have the longest period before they'll likely need the money, and that's where compound interest becomes this, like, superpower.
Compound interest, that's where your money starts earning returns, and then those returns start earning their own returns. That snowball effect.
Exactly that. There's a great fidelity example. Picture two grads. One saves $250 a month, but only for 10 years. That's $30,000 total saved, then stops.
Mm-hmm.
The second grad saves nothing for 10 years, then starts saving $250 a month, but does it for 30 years. So they save $90,000 in total, 3 times as much.
Wow, okay, so they saved way more.
But assuming an 8% average annual return over 40 years, guess who ends up with more?
Has to be the first one because of the early start.
You got it. Investor 1 ends up with around $509,000. Investor 2, despite saving triple the amount, only has about $375,000.
That's incredible. It really shows the power of starting early. So what should someone in their 20s actually do?
Priority 1, save as much as you reasonably can. Investopedia suggests shooting for maybe 15% of your pre-tax income.
Okay, 15%. And how should they invest it?
Given that long time horizon, they can generally afford more risk. So the allocation is usually heavy on stocks, equities, maybe 90% to 100% stocks, very little, if anything, in bonds at this stage.
And where's the best place to put that money first?
Always start with an employer's 401k, especially if there's a match. Waller FC calls it free money, and they're right, it's an instant return.
Can't beat free money.
Definitely not. If you don't have a 401k or you've maxed the match and want to save more, a Roth IRA is a fantastic option. The current limit, Waller FC notes, is $6,000 a year if you're under 50.
Okay. What else is crucial foundation building in your 20s?
Building good habits. Setting clear financial goals is key. Fidelity mentions using a reverse budget. Basically, pay your future self first by allocating to savings and investments, then spend what's left.
Instead of saving what's left over.
Exactly. Also, build that emergency fund. You need 3 to maybe even 12 months of living expenses stashed somewhere safe and accessible, like an online savings account. That's your safety net.
Super important.
And automate your investing. Set up regular contributions, that's dollar cost averaging. It takes emotion out of it, and you buy consistently whether the market's up or down.
And what should 20-somethings avoid doing?
Trying to time the market or pick the next hot stock, it's usually a losing game. Fidelity points out that passive investing using broad index funds generally works out better for most people long term.
Keep it simple.
Pretty much. Oh, and Waller FC has a great point. Invest in yourself too. Education, skills. Boosting your earning potential is a huge investment in your 20s.
Makes sense. Okay, moving into the 30s, things often get a bit more complex here, right? More juggling.
Yeah, absolutely. The 30s are often about balancing those long-term goals with more immediate pressures. Maybe you're starting a family, buying a house, careers demanding more.
So how does that affect investing?
Well, you absolutely need to keep up those saving habits, maximizing the 401k match, automating contributions. That's still vital. Investopedia really stresses that.
In the asset mix, still mostly stocks.
It could be. If retirement still feels a long way off, you might stick with a similar aggressive allocation as your 20s. Or you might start adding a bit more stability, maybe shifting slightly more towards bonds as those other responsibilities mount. It depends.
What other financial things become more important in your 30s?
That emergency fund becomes even more critical. Life just throws more curveballs sometimes. Investopedia also mentions thinking about life insurance, especially if you have dependents relying on your income.
Good point. Protection becomes more relevant.
And just generally getting into the habit of reviewing your portfolio regularly. Maybe once a year. Does it still match your goals, your life situation? It's about staying focused on growth, but acknowledging and preparing for those real-world needs.
Okay, let's jump to the 40s. Retirement is starting to look, well, less like a fuzzy concept on the horizon.
Exactly. It feels closer. So the big shift in your 40s, according to Investopedia, is really ramping up your savings rate. If you haven't hit that 15% or more target, now is the time to get serious about it.
Catch-up time, potentially.
Could be. You want to maximize contributions to those retirement accounts.
What about debt? If there's still, say, credit card debt or other high-interest loans.
Yeah, the 40s are definitely a time to aggressively tackle that high-interest debt. Investopedia highlights this. Every dollar going to high interest is a dollar not compounding for your future.
Makes sense. And the stock-bond split in your 40s. Still aiming for growth.
Generally, yes. Still leaning towards growth. Investopedia suggests something like maybe 80% equities, 20% bonds. But as Waller FC points out, this is where personal risk tolerance really comes into play more strongly.
Right.
You might see someone more conservative go 60-40 stocks to bonds, or someone more aggressive stick closer to 80-20. It's less about a strict age rule and more about your comfort level, your job stability, how much you've already saved, and that time horizon.
So more personalized adjustments start happening.
Definitely.
Okay, the 50s. Now retirement is really knocking on the door. This feels like a major transition point.
It really is. The focus in your 50s starts shifting pretty significantly towards preserving the capital you've built up. You're looking to dial down the risk, reduce that volatility as retirement gets closer.
So logically, that means more bonds, fewer stocks.
Generally, yes. That's the typical advice.
Yep.
Investopedia suggests maybe moving towards 60% or 70% in stocks, with the rest, 30% to 40% in bonds.
Yep.
And Waller FC agrees, mentioning shifting more to bonds and also bringing in dividend-paying stocks. Those can provide some income and tend to be a bit less volatile than pure growth stocks.
Is there anything specific people in their 50s should be doing, opportunity-wise?
Absolutely. A huge one Investopedia flags is using catch-up contributions. Once you hit 50, The IRS lets you put extra money into your 401k and IRA above the normal limits.
Ah, that's a big boost potentially.
It can be a massive help in those final working years, and this is also the decade to get really granular with retirement planning.
What exactly?
Thinking seriously about what your lifestyle will cost in retirement. How much can you safely withdraw from your savings each year? What are your healthcare options and costs going to look like? Waller FC also suggests maybe looking into other income streams like REITs, real estate investment trusts for dividends.
Lots to think about there.
Yep.
Okay, finally, the 60s and beyond. Retirement is here or very, very close. What's the strategy now?
The game changes fundamentally. You're moving from the accumulation phase, building wealth, to the distribution phase. You need your investments to generate income to live on.
So even more focus on income-producing assets.
Exactly. The portfolio shifts further. Investopedia suggests things like bonds, dividend stocks, maybe annuities for predictable income. They give an example allocation like 40% stocks, 60% bonds.
A big shift from the early years.
Huge shift. And you need to understand RMD's required minimum distributions. After a certain age, you have to start taking money out of traditional retirement accounts. Planning those withdrawals smartly for tax efficiency is crucial.
And Social Security fits in here too, right?
Absolutely. Integrating Social Security benefits into your overall income plan is key.
So what's the main goal for investing in retirement?
Primarily, it's about preserving your capital, making sure your money lasts, managing your expenses, especially healthcare, which can be a big variable, and just ensuring you have enough for a comfortable, sustainable lifestyle.
But do you just stop trying to grow the money at all?
Not necessarily. Waller FC makes a good point that you probably still want some growth potential to keep pace with inflation and make the money last longer, maybe decades, but it needs to be balanced with protecting against big market drops. Safeguards become really important.
Okay. So if we pull this all together, what's the main thread running through all these stages?
The absolute core message is that your investment strategy has to evolve with your life. It's not set it and forget it forever.
Right.
And while these age-based guidelines we've talked about are useful starting points, your personal situation matters most. Your comfort with risk, your specific goals, your timeline, those are the key drivers.
Not just the number on your birthday cake.
Exactly. And critically, you need to review and adjust things regularly. Life changes, markets change, your plan needs to keep up,
And maybe get some help.
especially as you get closer to and into retirement. Yeah. Professional advice can be really valuable for navigating the tricky bits like taxes, withdrawal strategies, healthcare planning.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive then, the big takeaway seems to be adapt your investing to where you are in life. Understand your timeline, your risk tolerance, your goals. That's essential for long-term success.
Absolutely. We've offered a framework based on what the sources say, but remember, your situation is unique. So take this as a starting point. Think about your own circumstances and maybe dig deeper or talk to a financial pro.
Definitely good advice. And maybe one last thought to leave everyone with. Given that people are living longer these days, how might our traditional ideas about retirement, the timelines, the strategies, how might those need to change for the future?
That's a huge question. Something definitely worth pondering as you plan your own financial journey. It underscores that need for ongoing learning and adaptation.
Indeed. Well, thanks for tuning in to the deep dive.